The final war will not begin with a launch siren. It will begin with silence. You are monitoring the wrong vector. The public is fixated on missile trajectories, a legacy threat from a solvent era. The Pentagon itself is conceding the new math. Internal documents on programs like Golden Dome reveal a fatal economic liability. The kinetic cost to intercept is now unsustainable. This is not a secret. It is an accounting problem. The systemic threat is a liquidity event, not a kinetic one. The target is not a city. It is the global financial plumbing. This is the blueprint for the asymmetric escalation protocol. While media outlets focus on visible conflict, the real war is being prepared against the global nervous system. The 1.3 million kilometers of subsea fiber optic cables that carry 99% of all transcontinental data and $10 trillion in daily financial transactions. This protocol is triggered by weakness. Reports from the Russian Presidential and Information Office indicate China's nuclear command structure is fractured, with its top general under investigation for leaking state secrets. This is not a sign of strength. It is a symptom of a solvency crisis reaching the highest levels of state power. When a nation's conventional and economic power erodes, its deterrent becomes a coercive tool. The objective is to create a blind leviathan. Severing financial and communication arteries triggers two events simultaneously: an instantaneous market collapse and total strategic blindness. Without satellite data, without swift transaction data, the state apparatus cannot see. It cannot confirm an attack, nor can it rule one out. It becomes a blinded giant, swinging wildly in the dark. This is the mathematical certainty of the new era. Widespread weakness, from Japan's currency failure to the hollowing out of Western defense economics, does not create peace. It creates an incentive structure for a first silent strike. The goal is not to win a war, but to trigger a systemic cascade where the blinded opponent is forced into a launch-on-warning protocol, effectively liquidating itself. The enemy never fires a shot. The motive is not ideology, it is insolvency. A state does not escalate to nuclear coercion because it is strong, but because it is critically weak. When the economic model fails, when the cost of projecting conventional power exceeds the state's liquidity, the entire strategic calculus inverts. The Pentagon is already confronting this reality with its own missile defense economics, where the kinetic cost of intercepting a drone swarm is orders of magnitude higher than the cost of launching one. This is a microcosm of the great power solvency crisis. CSIS analysis confirms this vector in the Ukraine conflict. The war became a catastrophic domestic liability for Russia, draining national reserves and eroding political capital. An unpopular, fiscally unsustainable ground war is the definition of a negative asset on the national balance sheet. This is not a geopolitical chess match. It is a leveraged buyout of national security, financed with debt the state can no longer service through conventional means. This forces the pivot to asymmetry. Weakness mandates a new strategy. When a nation can no longer afford to compete dollar for dollar, ship for ship, its nuclear arsenal is retasked. It ceases to be a passive deterrent and becomes an active lever of coercion. It is the ultimate hedge against conventional and economic failure, a tool to terminate an unwinnable conflict and dictate terms from a position of artificial strength. The mathematical certainty is that as solvency decreases, the utility of the nuclear option increases exponentially. The math is terminal for the industrial-era military. A single main battle tank represents a $5 million capital asset. A first-person view kamikaze drone that can achieve a mission kill against it costs $500. This is not speculation. It is the central finding from analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI. The kinetic cost exchange ratio has inverted. This mechanism is called the democratization of violence. The barrier to entry for projecting lethal force has collapsed. A state or a non-state actor no longer requires a vast industrial base or a solvent treasury to challenge a superpower's assets on the battlefield. It only requires access to consumer electronics. This new economic battlefield forces powers like the Pentagon to confront unsustainable defense economics. The cost to intercept is now orders of magnitude higher than the cost to attack. For every multi-million-dollar interceptor, an adversary can launch a swarm. It is a losing solvency equation, a mathematical certainty of bankruptcy through attrition. When a state can no longer afford to compete symmetrically, its nuclear arsenal ceases to be a passive deterrent. It becomes an active, coercive lever to offset this fatal, conventional liability. This is the asymmetric escalation protocol. The weapon of last resort becomes the first best option. Widespread weakness is a mathematical accelerant for nuclear conflict. Do not mistake the collapse of peripheral states for the primary conflict. The failure of the French-backed government in Lebanon is not a localized tragedy. It is a data point. These regions are gray zones, proxy laboratories, where great power competition is stress-tested at a low kinetic cost. They are geopolitical test tubes for asymmetric warfare protocols. Western intelligence is structured to monitor these traditional flashpoints. It is not structured to process the spread of this instability vector into the core. Analysts at CSIS now issue warnings about systemic fragility in nations previously considered stable, from Canada to South Africa. These are not random events. They are the calculated expansion of the gray zone, targeting logistical hubs and resource lifelines ahead of a larger confrontation. These proxy battlefields are necessary because the principles are approaching insolvency. The Pentagon confronts the mathematical certainty of unsustainable missile defense economics, where the kinetic cost of an interceptor far exceeds the asset it defends. Simultaneously, reports of General Zhang Yuxia leaking nuclear secrets reveal a catastrophic fracture in China's command structure. When you cannot compete dollar for dollar or ship for ship, you are forced to change the game. This is the asymmetric escalation protocol. The widespread systemic weakness, exemplified by Japan's currency failure, does not lead to peace. It lowers the threshold for nuclear leverage. The lessons learned in the gray zones, economic sabotage, political destabilization, become the blueprint for coercing a solvent adversary. A state's nuclear arsenal ceases to be a deterrent of last resort. It becomes the primary lever to offset a conventional and economic liability. The launch on warning doctrine is not a policy. It is a mathematical trap set by the Cold War. The protocol dictates that if early warning systems detect an incoming nuclear strike, a retaliatory launch is executed before the incoming warheads detonate. The decision window is not hours, it is minutes. There is no time to convene a committee. The system is designed for automated, reflexive escalation. This protocol has a systemic vulnerability, the integrity of the data. This is the fog of digital war. A sophisticated cyber attack does not need to physically destroy a radar installation. It only needs to blind it, or more critically, feed it false positives. The commander on duty is now presented with a binary choice, with no reliable intelligence. Choice 1. Assume it is a cyber attack or system error. If you are wrong, your nation's entire nuclear arsenal is annihilated in its silos. It is a zero-sum, civilization-ending failure. Choice 2. Follow protocol and launch a full retaliatory strike based on the phantom data. If you are wrong, you initiate global thermonuclear war. The doctrine is engineered to make the second choice the only rational one. This is no longer a theoretical exercise. According to reports cited by the Wall Street Journal, China's highest levels of military command are under investigation for allegedly leaking nuclear secrets, indicating severe internal fractures. This internal instability magnifies the risk of miscalculation. Simultaneously, as CSIS analysts note, the Pentagon is confronting unsustainable missile defense economics, where the kinetic cost of an interceptor vastly exceeds the cost of an incoming drone or missile. This economic liability makes reliance on hair-trigger doctrines like launch on warning a cheaper, albeit catastrophically riskier, alternative to building a robust, layered defense. Widespread weakness is the ultimate accelerant. The next 12 months will feature a strategic, attribution impossible event. Expect a catastrophic failure at a Tier 1 Western container port or a major colocation data center. It will be reported as a complex ransomware attack or a cascading IT grid failure. This will not be random, it is a calibration shot. A state actor facing a domestic solvency crisis and internal fractures within its nuclear command, as reported by outlets tracking the Russian Presidential and Information Office, must test the asymmetric escalation protocol. The kinetic cost of challenging Western naval power is prohibitive, a reality confirmed by Pentagon missile defense economics. The cost of a crippling cyber operation is near zero. The objective is not destruction. It is data collection on the West's response threshold to non-military systemic attacks. It is a live-fire stress test of economic warfare.